Hey guys, welcome back. I just wanted to do a quick summary video. I know a lot of you guys have probably been curious, what have I been up to, what have I been doing? And so I wanted to showcase some of the things that I've been working on the back end. Some of you guys have been keeping up with the updates that I've been putting out on the Discord. That's where I'm mainly living these days. I will be returning to YouTube here shortly, but I've had a lot of things that I've kind of been heads down, trying to get a lot of things done in the background. A lot of exciting things coming, especially for the upcoming release of the Beast. But I am happy to share that as of last month, I was able to get all 6 games, the original Dead Island series, and the first Dying Light 1 and Dying Light 2 completely supported by the Unofficial Dev Tools. So what that means is that basically I've created a database where that database has now essentially allowed me, which you can check out if you're interested. You can just go over to the Discord and scroll up a little bit, and this is where I announced it. And essentially what I've got here is a summary of all the scripts that are supported by the Unofficial Dev Tools. And what this means is basically that the tools are able to read all of this data inside of each game to the point where it has enough understanding of the code to be able to write it as well. And so for those of you that are kind of returning, what that means is that previously I was setting up the code to where it could basically go, and I accidentally clicked that button by accident, so we're about to launch into the game here. But basically everything was set up to where you would be able to parse all the data. So I've written all these different tools inside the tool set to where I'm able to basically automatically go through and catalog the data for each game and then bring that into a database, which basically allows it to, check and update the code and write the code from here on out. So first there was the parsing and fully understanding every script and being able to reverse engineer it back all the way to Dead Island, and then be able to take that code and play with this idea of sending mods between games. So for example, creating a single mod that adds like a new cool machete that you really love, and then being able to actually create that item for every game using this tool set. So why do it, for every single game? We could only do it once using these tools. And so what that looks like is basically as I've gone through and set up each part of this, I'm now actually going through and writing the scripts back. So the code is actually able to generate scripts. And so not only am I parsing the data and creating that data as what I'm calling a script config, I'm now also taking that data and then able to turn it back into the original script, only much cleaner. So what I've been doing is basically trying to get every single edge case accounted for in all the different versions of the scripts, and then taking that data. So this is an example of what that script config looks like. So essentially it ends up, getting all of this data, and then regardless of, the syntax, it essentially stores all of this data in a very clean and easy to read way. So then once I am ready to use that data, I can then go over here and actually turn this in-game audio down. I can actually go and write that script. So once we have everything set up, I can then actually go and tell it that I want to create the script, and it will go and it'll actually give me a percentage match to the original script. And the goal here is to basically be able to go through and try to identify, especially with the larger scripts, how close is it to the original script line by line. And it does do a good job of cleaning it out, and there are a lot of edge cases where it doesn't write everything in the exact same order, and so for the most part you end up with a slight mismatch. But now we can go over to generated data and actually, so for example, I can generate all of the inventory or the spawn pools or the AI presets All of that can be immediately written by the tools now, which then results in a standard release. So basically everything doesn't have any form of weird, indentions or any type of weird offsets. All of it is printed in the same format, in the same layout. And what that ends up generating is the ability to make mods on a much larger scale so that you can go in there and modify values across all these different weapons very easily, along with the outfits and the presets and all these different things. So on the back end, there are tools in place to where it's now reading directly from the R packs. So I'm getting all the data directly from the R packs for Dying Light 2. Still working on tools for the earlier games, so that's still in the process. I've had awesome support from the community on that, so I am not a binary person that writes in binary, and so because of that, I've had to get a lot of help. Eric has been a big help, Bub has chipped in, Securovich, several other large members in the community, in the modding community, have jumped in and given feedback on how to do these things, including the original writer of the 010 editor tools, the RPack extraction tools is part of the team. And so we've taken a look at a lot of these different things and is starting to say, okay, how can we kind of piece more of these things together so that the community gets more access to more fun things here in the near future. With that being said, the goal is to fully support the upcoming The Beast release by making these tools to allow the transfer of mod content between all of the different games. And so assuming that nothing is drastically different with The Beast versus Dying Light 2, all of the mods should transfer over to The Beast, and a lot of updates are coming. So with the launcher, I've continued to step forward and then take 5 steps back, because every time I go back to this basic system of installing, previously I went with the approach of having this massive overhaul that you could then use the mod config to modify certain values, but you were modifying maybe 10% of everything that the mod did, and the injection process of the mod config actually didn't work that well. Certain parts of the engine you can't, at least to my knowledge, you can't inject into certain scripts like that. And so there was a large amount of things that I basically couldn't do because of the injection process. So what I've done is made a tool that is able to write the scripts so it can help make sure that there's no syntax errors, that everything is getting injected properly, and it's also pulling the latest data from the game. So something that's pretty cool here is that the tools now directly do everything with the actual game data. So everything is being pulled directly from the different games. So as you set up the different games and say that that you own them, it will go and it'll actually find the data packs, and you can immediately load in all of the scripts and all of the data immediately from their files, so that you're not taking older editions of the game, you're actually taking the edition of the game and modifying directly onto that. The goal with all of that is so that when an update comes out, the code is robust enough to where it's able to understand what's changed and basically ignore it. So I'm writing code that basically allows the code to use JSONs to say these are the slight modifications to different files. Using the parsing and the regex templates that I've created, it's then saying this is where those changes need to go regardless of where they are in the file. So it's not making line changes like you would normally see on like a win merge. It's actually making independent changes to the actual identifiers and values based on the regex patterns that I've created for every single script in the game. All 6 games. The Beast is next. So that is what's happening on the back end. The Infinity Designer is getting reworked. So the Infinity Designer is great for what it currently is. I haven't replaced it in the code just yet, or for the release, because it does what it does pretty well. But the next step is adding intelligent thinking to the tool. So I want to give an example of that. So this tool is it's a tool that I'm working on right now. So you have the behavior tree editor. So inside of Dying Light 2, you have these XML files that, you know, for any of you who have gone in here and looked at the behavior files, this is an example of a behavior file that you would normally see for Dying Light 2 that tells the AI how to behave and when to behave with different actions. And there's all sorts of modifiers and slight things that you can do. It took me a long time to figure out how to manipulate this to get the custom AIs that I now have inside of IAM Legion. And so what I've decided to do is, instead of trying to support this type of XML editing, I've written something that I'm sure the Techland team has on board. I've applied to the Techland team. I haven't gotten hired by the Techland team, so that's okay. I'm continuing to look at how I can bring this content to you guys without working with the Techland team for now. I hope to hear from them in the future. But essentially what I've created is probably what they have in-house, which is reading back this data using actual graphs and trees, so that when it comes to what you're seeing, instead of a good example of this is that when you see this file, anywhere where you see a $sign, this is actually where it's calling on another script. So it's actually, for each one of these references that you see here, it's actually calling on a parameter file somewhere else. And so when you see this value and you see something like cooldown time, you're sitting there going like, okay, so this is whatever this reference is here, and you have to go find it elsewhere. So what the tool does is it actually goes and it gets the actual values, just as a simple of example of how to expedite the process. It goes and it gets that actual value so that what you're seeing inside the graph is the true values, which you can easily then switch between the represented reference values or the true values, so that you can very quickly identify, is this the value that I want at the baseline? Because you then have the different variations of the presets with difficulty and that kind of thing, different quests. And that's where I haven't quite figured out how to load in those values so that you can start to understand how will this file scale. And so I'm still looking at different options, but this should allow you to basically go in here and rewire sequences as well for the AI. So if you actually want to go in here and say, well, I actually don't want them to be aggressive, I only want them to be defensive, you can now use this tool to actually go in there and remove these nodes from the code and then hit save. And it'll save out that file immediately with your changes, with the removal of different nodes, and you keep it clean and you have clean XML. You never have to worry about stupid syntax errors and all the little things that can happen from editing the raw code. And this is just an example of tools that I'm trying to bring to the community. So another example of this is the in-progress weapon designer. So it's still definitely in the works. Basically what I've run into is the parser code for the bigger games, for the Dying Light 2 games. There's just so much data. Like, as they've continued to release updates and updates and updates, there's just so many damn weapons that are getting pulled into the game, to where you end up with these massively bloated definition files for the weapons and everything, that I'm currently still looking at the best way to go in there and say, all right, let's make this really easy to read and understand. But here's an example. So if we want to go to the Dying Light game, you have the Dying Light game installed, and you want to pull in the Hell Raid weapons, you can pull in this, you can select this, and it didn't pull it in. Oh, I apologize. You have to switch for the first one, which I thought I did here. Hang on, let me make sure these are loading in. Lord knows I probably, oh, there we go. Not sure why the other ones weren't loading in, but essentially the idea here is that you go in here, you select your file, it generates your little icons, it loads in when you click on the different ones, it loads a model, it loads all of the values for that weapon, and all of it's really easy to read, easy to use. Obviously this is very early stage and still in the works, and so something that I'm slowly moving, I'm basically moving, you know, 8 or 9 tools all inside this massive tool set forward a little bit at a time, while continuing to provide tech support and updates the best I can for the current version of the mod. But basically everything is getting reworked, everything is getting rebuilt from the ground up. The goal of this is to be able to use tools like this, which this may look simple to you guys, but basically it's doing so much on the back end to validate and confirm that all the data that's being displayed is legitimate. And that's probably the biggest thing is that when you're creating new weapons, such as the flamethrower for Dying Light 2, when you're trying to say like, okay, well, what can I create next? There is lots of things that you can plug and play and waste an entire day of seeing if it works, but without the source code, without the engine, you end up burning a lot of daylight just launching the game, loading in, and trying to get out there to test your weapon. And so I've found that it's a lot easier to use tools like these to where you can just go in here, tweak some things, only tweak things that you know actually exist in the actual game code, and add modules or add nodes to this, or values, fields, whatever you want to call it, to where you can actually write new weapons very quickly without worrying about, well, hang on, does this actually exist in the code? And the biggest bonus of this is being able to generate definition files. So for each one of these, with this new system, this new parsing system, is a whole suite of tools for myself that I've written that basically allow me to understand, you know, what was the definition of this file before. And by definition, I mean like, what were all of the possible infinite amount of things that could be done with this script previously. So let's grab one of these scripts here. So with this script, say this one has 100% match. So when I write it versus when I read it, it's the exact same file. If we want to generate a definition, it goes and it creates a definition file for this. And if we select this here, you can see that it will load this up. And when we scroll down here, it creates a standard for this file that basically says the most that it found underneath these types of files are these 4 types of data: the bank name, the graph name, the graph preset name, and the bind namespace. So in the future, if there's ever an update, which, oh, I apologize, I realize that some of this is being cut off. So sorry about that. As you start to see more of these things change over time, they put out an update. These definition files that are created for each one could then say a value change. So for example, this is no longer called graphs preset name. They went in there and changed this to graph prefab name. So they refactored something on the back end. They're no longer using presets here, they're using prefabs. If you've written scripts, if you've written mods that are dependent on that being a preset, then how do you then update all of your mods that use those old values? Well, using these definition files, you can then actually say, this is what the value was, this is what it became. And you can actually go in there and rewrite or update your mod immediately to use the new standard. So just doing some of these things on the back end, it's been a lot of fun for me. I'm learning so many things on a day-to-day basis, looking into these things. It's been, you know, a fluctuation of full-time and part-time, you know, as I'm continuing to, you know, learn myself and also look for opportunities in the AAA industry and indie game markets. It's been really difficult right now as far as like the hiring markets and like what's out there. There's just, it's bizarre what's happening right now as far as like the game dev communities. They're becoming really thin right now. And so just doing what I can to try to keep a clear head, learn, grow, meet with the community, understand what they're excited to see in the upcoming updates, and continue to get out good content for you guys. So all of these tools are continuing to be pushed forward. I'm still going to reach out to Techland to see if there are any things that, you know, I need to be aware of as far as, you know, could they come along and say, you can't release the tools, God forbid, you know, what could we do to actually work with those teams so that we can make sure that it's not actually encroaching on that EULA, but it actually allows the community, because all of this is getting linked into Discord. And so the goal here is to redo the entire Discord server with the ability to join each other's multiplayer games, have collections of mods instead of just having a single mod or having a whole bunch of mods, having mod collections, which is similar to some of the things you see on the Nexus. But the difference is that those mods that you download for your game are all using the system so that they can auto update, they can merge together really easily, and they can use this new standard so that you can deploy these out to your game, your friend's game, match that data, and use the new multiplayer tools that I've been working on so that you guys can join each other immediately, mix and match different mods. And there are a ton of little things that once these tools are in place, that I'm excited to bring you guys here in the near future with some upcoming Play the Zombie mods and some different content creation contests and other things that I'm working on. I'm just trying to make sure that the code base is where it needs to be able to get it out to you guys so you can start using it, enjoying it, and we run into as few of issues as possible. If you haven't checked out the Infinity Designer, please make sure to check that out. I'll add a link to the video. Make sure to like and support if you want to subscribe. I am still out here. Looking forward to hearing your guys' feedback. I Am Legion is currently playable, but there are some bugs in there. If you want to give feedback, if you want to add to the bug list, you can. Because everything is basically getting completely rewritten, completely reworked, at this time, I'm not releasing new content. I'm not looking to dive into a lot of problems in the code, because basically refactoring the entire code base is going to allow me to see things in a whole different light using tools like these. And so I'm less concerned about what's currently happening. It's in a playable state. You can still have fun. It's just this next overhaul to the whole overhaul is going to be awesome. And so stay tuned. Hope you guys are all doing well. Stay safe out there. Happy gaming. And I look forward to talking to you guys next time. Have a good one.